Today we're going to make one of these cute little fabric totes that I'm going to use for a poinsettia plant that I bought. I've got my templates, my base and my sides. I've got my fabric, and we'll go ahead and get started right away. I already cut out this on a separate piece just to get started here to save some time. And so I've got my interfacing and my exterior print. I'm just going to stack them just for the sake of time. And we'll go ahead then and cut out that circle base out of this fabric. Stack all of them. You would use a fabric marking pencil or pen or whatnot. I'm going to use a Sharpie just so you can see it better. I do not recommend this if you're doing this for your own designs, because it can, if you wash it, it can just kind of stain that fabric, and it's not ideal. But just for the sake of being able to see it better on the camera, we'll use the Sharpie. So I traced my template, and then next I'm going to go ahead and cut this. I have a rotary cutter. If you have a scissors, you may want to just do this one at a time so they don't shift and move around on you. You want to make sure with circles they are very touchy. If you make it a little bit too big or a little bit too small, you're going to run into issues when you put the sides onto this tote, because a little difference in a circle makes a big difference around the circumference of the circle. So just be careful that you're cutting. I cut just inside of the line that I made. Right on the line if you have a smaller marking pencil that you used. All right, so now I have my 3 circles, my interior print, my exterior print, and my interfacing. Next, we'll then cut out the size of it. Now, I prefer using my rotary cutter and mat, but if you prefer to use templates, if you don't have one of these, you can then do the templates that I have provided and cut them out along the black line. Again, for sake of time, I'm going to use my rotary cutter to cut out my templates just to show you how these are used. And since I have them stacked, I'm just going to cut out on this top one because it's just the size that I need. So once I have these cut out, of course my paper shifted on me there. What you're going to then do is just tape them end to end to get the dimensions that are required. For this tutorial or this demonstration, I am going to be showing you the 4-inch pot one. So I'll take my scraps and get them out of the way. And what you're going to do then is just tape these end to end, kind of line up the edges there, and tape them. And then if you want to, you can just put them against your template. Against your fabric. And then if you didn't have a rotary cutter, you would then trace it and then cut along your trace line. But I'm going to use my rotary cutter because it is a lot faster. So that's how you would use the template. So for my exterior print, I'll just show you how I do it on the rotary mat. You just measure the dimensions listed in the packet to cut out your size. And just make sure you have your fabric squared up on the rotary mat so that you have a nice squared cut. You can see this is a little bit bowed out, so I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. And then I got to get my right height on this. Now, if you do have a directional print, you will not be able to make this truly reversible, because the way this is intended, the lining of it then is folded outwards. So if you had a directional print, it would then be upside down on here if you had that way. I wish I had one to show you the way that would be, but truly, if you're going to make this reversible, you're going to want a non-directional print on both sides so that when you flip it the opposite way, it's laid the right way. Okay, so now we have our fabric pieces cut. We have our exterior print, our interior print, and then our 3 circles. And don't forget to cut out your stabilizer. I'm going to go do that here next. The stabilizer, I will just use my template I hope I left room on that circle. I did. Okay. With the stabilizer, the interfacing rather, I usually make that just a smidge smaller than the rest of it, just because when I iron it, I don't want to have to fight having that come over and touch my iron face and melt on there. So I just make it just a tiny bit smaller so that it fits inside that fabric nicely. All right, so now we are ready to get started. We have all of the fabric requirements needed. Next, we will be working on getting that stabilizer onto the fabric. All right, so I make this and I just use one layer of the stabilizer. If you wanted this a little bit more sturdy, you could bump up the thickness of your stabilizer. I just have a medium fusible stabilizer here. If you didn't want to quite bump up but want a little bit more sturdy, then you could cut out 2 of these for these and then iron 1 on this set and then 1 on this set. For this demonstration, I'm only going to just do 1. So I'm going to choose my exterior fabric, put it face down, and then find it's a little bit more rough on the side that fuses to the fabric. So I kind of cover that there, and I'm going to just iron it from the front here. And I'm just going to make sure that the interfacing isn't peeking out over the edge, otherwise it'll stick to my iron. And just iron this on to secure it. Then they are together and fused together. And then I'll do the same then for my side strip. I'm gonna find the edge that has a little bit of a bumpy, rougher texture, center it on my fabric, and then iron it in place. And then again, you can see that is fused together. So next we'll sew the sides together. So go ahead and take your fabric and then fold it in half this way so that the long edge is being folded in half. Line up your 2 short sides, get them nice and in alignment, and then pin them together. You could do the same then for your interior piece of fabric, right sides facing, fold it in half this way so that these short edges are in alignment, pinned together. Next, I want you to go ahead and sew along this short edge, just this one edge here, using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I sewed that short edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both pieces of my fabrics here. Next, we're going to attach our base piece onto the fabric. If you do have a directional print, you will want to make sure you're attaching the base piece to the bottom edge of the fabric. So to start out, just kind of open your print here, and I always start out by the seam. You can really start out anywhere and just line up the edge of the base to the edge of this fabric here. You can see how I have that right against the edge, and then pin it in place. The key to sewing and assembling this step here is to pin quite often. I'm probably pinning every, gosh, what is that? About a 1/2 inch or so. And then once I have that pin, I kind of move around and I pivot my fabric so that the edges are always kind of meeting each other. So go ahead and pin around that entire circle. All right, so when you get pinned all the way around, let me hold it so you can see it. It's around all of the edges, and I made it look really quick because I've done this a lot, but it does take a little bit of patience and practice. So go ahead and pin all of that around, and then repeat then for your other set of circle inside here. So then you have both of them pinned and ready to be sewn together. We'll do that next. So now I'm ready to sew, and I'm gonna just sew using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, going slow and pivoting that fabric as I approach basically each pin. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started here. My machine has a feature where I can push a button every time I lift my presser or my foot off the pedal. It puts my needle down and raises my presser foot, so it makes that pivoting very easy. Alright, then once you get all the way around, I recommend, mine didn't cut for me there, I recommend just flipping it over and double checking to make sure that you didn't miss an edge and not go deep enough. Like here I got a little close, it looks like, but it's all in case. I might just go around that little section a little bit more just to make sure it doesn't pull through and cause me issues later on. Then go ahead and repeat that, sewing that base on with your other side of the tote here. All right, now that I have both of the bases sewn on, go ahead and flip one of these right side out. I think in the written instructions I said the inside one, but it really doesn't matter. One of them has to be inside out and one of them has to be right side out. So then go ahead and place them inside of each other so that the print of the fabrics are facing each other. Line up the side seam of each of these totes. See how I have that inside seam with this outside seam? Go ahead, line them up and pin it together so that the seams are in alignment and that top edge is also in alignment. And then you're going to pin around the whole perimeter here of this upper edge. I can get it to line up here. Okay, so I usually just do that seam first and then I take my fingers inside there and I kind of find that other side edge over here and I pin that one next. Looks like I gotta scoot it down just a smidge. Okay, and then I put another pin on this next little section here in the center and then another one along this edge here. So I have my two little circle totes, right sides facing each other, kind of tucked inside each other with the side seams in alignment and the top edge in alignment. Next, we're going to sew around this circular perimeter here, leaving about 3 inches or so that we can turn this project right side out when we're done. All right, so I sewed that together off camera here, but that top edge is sewn around the perimeter with an opening about the width of my 4 fingers. So go ahead next then and turn this project right side out through that opening, being careful not to pull too hard on your seam and cause that to tear out. And my exterior print, I go ahead at this point and I just push out the edges to make sure that's laying smooth. Okay, so now it kind of looks like this. What you're going to do next is you're going to take your lining and push it down into there so that it's sitting inside there. And you can see when I first do that, I have this little bit of a lip here that isn't going. What you're going to want to do is take it, find that edge, fold it kind of on itself so that it's right, the seam of that fabric is right in the center, and then I just take and I pull the other fabric out of the way, all the way around, and I top stitch that so that that seam is right on where that fabric folds back on itself. And so it takes, again, a little bit of patience. I probably make it look faster than what you might be able to do it if you haven't done this before. But go ahead then and get that fold along the whole edge, around the whole perimeter of this bucket. When you get to the opening, I'll show you what to do there. Okay, so now that I've kind of gone around most of it, I have this opening, that 3 inch opening that I had here with those raw edges. What you're gonna do is I kind of put my fingers right in the edges there and I pull it, and you can see that makes kind of a natural crease where my seam allowance was, that quarter of an inch seam allowance. And then you're gonna match up those folded edges and then pin them together. That way, when we top stitch around here, those raw edges are going to be tucked inside and hidden, and there's no risk then of them fraying either. So I throw a couple extra pins around that edge so that I know to make sure that I'm getting those raw edges encased. So now we are ready to then top stitch this perimeter of the top, and we'll be all done at that point. So go ahead next and sew. I would do a scant 1/4 inch seam because you want to make sure that you're sewing above where those raw edges are tucked inwards where they end, so that they get stuck, kind of stuck in there. All right, so I top stitched that perimeter and my raw edges are now completely hidden. You can't even tell where I tucked that right side out of. And so then you are done. The pattern is intended for you to fold over the cuff so you have that accent piece showing. You can decide how much of a cuff you want. If you wanted a bigger one, you could just increase the length of that fabric, but that is how it is. I did want to mention I have a bigger one that I had made previously for my 6-inch pot. I recommend buying these little drip pans that you can get from Amazon, Menards, wherever, and I would stick that in the bottom like that, so that when you water your plants, if they overflow, you won't have to wash this as often. But then your pot then can go inside there, and it is done. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Thank you.